2 years old. But anyways, I'm glad to be here. Talk to you a little bit about what's going on and what I see going on at the federal level. I was at an orientation a couple weeks ago for a full week, and I was in Washington this past week for more issue stuff, and go back to Washington on first part of January. We'll get sworn in on the 5th. Only to learn that things are worse than we had thought. To give you an example, let's say you want to balance the federal budget in 10 years, in 2020. To do that, I guess using revenue growth that they've had, I guess, which is kind of stagnant, you'd have to cut everything, Social Security and Medicare, 22% to get a balanced budget in 10 years. And if you exempt out Social Security and Medicare, you'd have to cut everything 45%. Those are pretty big cuts. We're in deep, trouble. 4 years ago, the national debt was about $8 trillion. Now it's about $14 trillion. It amazes me how we went 200 plus years to rack up $8 trillion of debt, and now we've racked up, 50% as much or more. I do the math, it's more than that in 4 years. Congress, this current Congress, current leadership apparently didn't get the memo on November 2nd. This past week, I got my notes here on this one, I'll read this a little bit. They passed a continued resolution to fund the federal government for the next year, $1.09 trillion. They failed to pass the 12 appropriation bills this year, or a budget. They just passed CR's, continued resolutions. They increased areas like labor, health, and human services programs received a 4% increase over the past year. So all they did was continue their spending program. If we had our dithers, if we were in majority, we would have moved that discretionary spending back to fiscal year 08 levels, which are still pretty good. But they're just continuing to spend. You're probably hearing a lot of this past week on the so-called compromise. Keep in mind, the Democrats are still in control here. Of all the House, the Senate, and of course the administration. Without doing anything, we will see the largest tax increase in American history come January 1st. That is bad news. Now the bad thing about their compromise is it's not all that great either. It extends the current tax rates for 2 years. Doesn't really address the issue of uncertainty. And my issue has been the problem in Washington D.C. is that their policies are creating so much uncertainty, and I think the real problem is the deficit spending. Deficit spending. I love your signs, because that's really appropriate. But the deficit spending, it's not just, it's a lot of things. It's a national security issue. We're borrowing money from the Chinese and other places. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think that's healthy. And the second reason is, the more and more we rack up this massive debt, that means the money that does come into the federal government, more of it has to go to service that debt, interest. This year, the interest payment will be $202 billion. And the track we're on, and not too many years down the road, it'll be $1 trillion. And our debt will exceed 90% of the gross domestic product. That will put us in places worse than Greece. When you get at that level, when you exceed that level, it was explained to me the way to get out of that is very difficult, because the numbers just exponentially work against you. I've seen some figures last week. I need to get that PowerPoint. I don't know it yet. They talk about Social Security, Medicare, and all that, and the deficit spending. It turns out that the Congressional Budget Office computers in 2037 or 2030, they can't even project it anymore. They just kind of broke. No pun intended there. So back to it's a national security issue for those reasons, and the number one thing we have to do, we've got to cut this deficit spending. That's the absolute number one thing. Now I'm encouraged by the new freshman class. In the Republican side, I think there's about 86 of us that came in. It's kind of unprecedented. A lot of them, about a third of them probably never held elected office. They got a little bit of there are a lot of small business people, and I think we're going to be united in standing up that we've got to get this spending under control. What you speak about uncertainty. Businesses, when I learned the campaign in these 16 counties, I can give you stories, and it's really amazing. It's got to be a broken record where everybody is scared to do anything. And now you see reports where large corporations in this country are sitting on trillions of dollars of cash. Small and medium-sized businesses, if they're not hurting financially, if they're not investing, they're sitting on cash. And because the uncertainty of what's going to come January 1st, they're going to have a tax increase. The uncertainty of what energy prices are going to do because it's cap and trade nonsense, cap and tax. The uncertainty because of Obamacare. I've had employers tell me that they quit hiring just because of that one reason alone. Because costs are going up, taxes are going up, and that's not an area where employers, entrepreneurs, risk takers are willing to invest. They need to have some level of certainty. They need to know what the interest rates are going to be, or some level of where the economy is moving in the future. But with the deficit spending, you don't know that. They need to know what energy prices. They know what their costs are going to be. And we are at the maximum, at least in my lifetime, of uncertainty, I believe. And everybody's sitting back on their hands. Now, the one good thing I've discovered, there's a lot of pent-up demand out there. And if they got the right signals out of Washington, they would move forward with some fiscal responsibility and some economic certainty. They are ready to invest in business and start hiring people back. And to me, it's pretty simple what we have to do to restore that confidence in the private sector. One is obviously cut the spending. Two, roll back these massive tax increases, keep more money in your pockets, families and businesses' pockets. And three, regulatory reform. We have a bureaucracy that is killing jobs, and it starts with the Environmental Protection Agency. I like to call it. EPA stands for Elimination of Productive Activity, and it's just really scary how this Congress has neglected their responsibility, especially when they've let the EPA move forward on classifying carbon dioxide as a hazardous pollutant. That is really scary. That gives them a lot of unbridled control and power, and we need to stop that. But I think if we do those three things, start moving in that direction, you'll see this economy come back. And the only way we get out of this mess, this big hole we're in this economy, is we got to grow out of it. The private sector needs to grow. People got to get back to work. And raising taxes is the worst thing we can do. More government. Obviously, the stimulus, I'm laughing because it's such a joke. The stimulus bill has not worked. And so now we're at the situation where they got this, back to where we got on this compromise on the tax deal. Should have been permanent. Shouldn't be just for a 2-year deal. The unemployment thing, extending it to about 99 weeks, whatever it is, some people have 3 years. That's moving us towards a European-type socialist program. I've heard a lot of stories, a lot of people that could have got a job, but then the unemployment was better. And I don't know why nobody's talking about it. I think I want to start talking about it. On this unemployment deal, probably at some point it needs to be like a declining balance. You're on it for the safety net program, and after a period of time it starts declining. It doesn't just keep going on. And so if you're on unemployment and you've been on it for a long time, and at some point you know next month you're going to get less than you got this month. And I think they need to start moving that way and start incentivizing people to get off unemployment and not make it such a big deal. And now on the Republican side, they've been saying, well, if we're going to do it, we need to pay for it. And they haven't spent all the so-called stimulus funds, and there's been no, on the other side, movement to at least pay for all this increased spending. So we got to reform how we do the unemployment, I think. And one way, like I say, I think is, kind of like that declining balance on your depreciation. We got to move forward, and it's not going to last forever. But you have programs to help people get hand up and not a handout. Now it's turning into a handout, and it's starting to come back to where a welfare program, and that needs to change. You know, it's really amazing some of the things the Democrats in control want to talk about. This lame duck. This week they passed the DREAM Act, which is basically giving amnesty to illegals. I don't know, you know, they talk about, well, if you were a child of an illegal family and you were here before you're age 16, you do a couple things, you become a citizen. Well, if that isn't open for abuse, I don't know what it is. How you going to document, you know? So it's just more to that. There was a FDA thing this week, food safety bill, which are really going to increase, I think, size of government too, and add cost to businesses. So, you know, I think it's important to remember, you know, the new Congress takes over basically January 5th. We got some huge challenges. You know, when I tell people, I learned this a long time ago when I went into the legislature in '03. When everybody comes to you, and everybody's got a good program, you know, and when money's rolled into government, it's going to get spent because it's easier for our elected officials to say yes than no. But we're at a point now, both at the federal and state level, as Chuck mentioned, $8 billion goal at the state level, where we have to say no, because if we don't say no, it's going to happen automatically, and we're not too far down the road because we're going to be we're in trouble. It was mentioned at one of the seminars this week. So we're going to be like a third world banana republic. And you know what the answer? You know what they said? You wish, because we're already worse than that right now. We are already worse than some of these banana republics. When you look at our liabilities and the trajectory we're on for the spending and debt. And so, anyways, my goal is, I think, the freshman class, and Speaker-elect Boehner and Eric Cannon, the majority leader, and others are, you know, saying the same thing. They announced this week that we are going to pass a bill, hopefully in January, to repeal Obamacare. Now, there's no doubt, well, I'm pretty sure that if it makes it out of the Senate, President Obama will veto it. This is his, you know, landmark legislation. It is a total disaster. It will bankrupt us, quality of service. I mean, you just go on and on and on. What a disaster Obamacare is. And we do need some reforms in healthcare. What reforms we need to do, I think, is number one, we're looking at what reforms we need. They need to address the escalating costs, because it's a point where nobody can afford it. And when we're doing that, to address the escalating costs, we need to be incorporating free market principles as much as possible in the private market system. And number one is tort reform, defensive medicine. We need to fix that. Number two, you need to have portability. You ought to be able to buy health insurance across state lines. That opens up over 3,000, I guess, insurance provider markets instead of just a handful here in the state. Low competition is a good thing. I know us in private business, on a day-to-day basis, we always complain about competition, but we all know that's what makes us great as a nation, makes us more efficient, and that's just human nature. If we don't have competition, we get lazy. And number three, here's something I've been talking a lot in the campaign, is medical savings accounts. What I like to see in the medical savings accounts, obviously, your employer or employee kicks into this account pre-tax. That's an account that will stay with you for all your life, you know, wherever you live. You know, it's your account for you to direct. But here's I think a major difference. What I think that we ought to be doing, really incentivize that account, so that account would be used to pay for preventative and routine care. So when you go and have your annual checkups or just kind of preventative routine care, you pay for those doctor visits out of that account. You don't pay a copay, you don't file an insurance claim and everything else. Because notice when you go into your doctor's office, our docs are spending way too much time, their personnel, on administrative costs, filing all that paperwork, all those different insurance companies. So that would be a huge cost saver, because a huge administration cost would be gone. and also enhance personal responsibility, because you're paying, people pay for that out of their account. And I think they'd have a better frank conversation with their physician, because I'm not saying don't have tests, but have a frank conversation then, what test do I really need? So that would help on the defense and medicine side and those costs. So I think that would go a long ways. And now for the people that are uninsured, on health insurance, can't get, I think we should only talk about people that are medically uninsured and what we should do, because the reason we need to try to tackle that issue is because we're paying for it anyway, because they end up in the emergency room. And, it's, figure, it's pretty much about $1,000 to walk through the door and the meter starts ticking. I think to address the medically uninsured is what we ought to encourage states to develop group risk pools, and there'd be a little subsidy here, but let the states be the laboratories. The founding fathers had it right. They would encourage competition between states, because that's the only way you can make state governments more efficient. And maybe if states were developing programs, maybe one or two states might get something halfway right, and others might screw it up. And when they screw it up, they screw it up. But if the federal government does it, I can guarantee you it's going to be screwed up. It's going to be a big bureaucracy and high cost. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So let the states do it. Create group risk pools with the private sector, and try to address that issue, because I think we do need to address that issue, because it's a big burden on society now, one way or the other. Either if you have insurance and you're paying premiums to cover the cost of the uninsured, or taxpayers are picking up in the Medicaid program. So you're picking them up one way or the other. So that's why I think it's important to address that. I want to I'll talk a little bit here. I want to do a lot of questions and answers, so get ready, because I think that's part of the format. But I'll talk about taxes a little bit, healthcare, energy. Energy. This country is blessed with a lot of plentiful energy supplies, but we're not shooting ourselves in the foot. We're shooting ourselves in the head with these nonsense programs. And New York State just did a real bright thing. I'm saying that very tongue-in-cheek. We have a new shale gas from Sala. Shale, however you say it, was from Eastern Ohio through Pennsylvania, New York State. Well, I guess New York State in the last week or so put a moratorium on fracking, so that means they can't get that shale gas. Now here in Ohio, there's a new development called Utica Shale. It's about 8,000 feet deep, and we can be in the natural gas. We've got a tremendous opportunity to be really self-independent, and maybe even an exporter of natural gas not too far down the road if we allow it to be developed. We have a lot of exciting things going on in the other areas. I'm really excited about biogas digestion. There's a lot of excitement going on there. There's things, I'm not too big on the wind and solar. I don't think those are economically feasible yet. Keep this in mind. We can produce here in this area of Ohio kilowatt of wholesale kilowatt electricity by coal, about 3.5 cents a kilowatt. It's at least 12 times more of that for a solar field. So the economics just isn't there. It doesn't make sense. But we need to have a reliable and affordable energy supply if we expect to have a growing economy and create jobs. And before I turn close to take answers, I want to leave you with this thought. I said this a lot in the campaign because you didn't get to hear me this time, because you were one of the 16 counties, which is hard to believe. But anyway, so we need to be. What's made this country great is our innovation, our entrepreneurship, and we've created wealth. And when I talk about creating wealth, what I mean is you take something and you add value to it for something that people need. And there's really three ways you can create wealth. And when you create wealth, you create jobs and opportunities. But there's three ways that you create wealth. One is you develop our natural resources, you mine it or drill it. Number two, you raise or grow it, agriculture. Or number three, you make it, manufacture. Okay? So you're doing those things, you're adding value to something that people need, and you're creating jobs and opportunities. Now you think about it, in this administration, in this current Congress, everything they've done, everything, they put barriers up against the people out there that are trying to take risk on and create wealth. Higher taxes, higher costs, burdensome regulations. They just put barriers on all that. And now now they want to talk about wealth redistribution. We need to talk about wealth creation, and that's what's made this country great. If you're not creating wealth, you're not creating jobs and opportunities. And where this really hit home to me was years ago, when I was about 21 years old, I started raising hogs. I know that's not a big thing up here in Medina County, but in agriculture, it was, that's what I was doing. And my dad was an insurance broker up in Cleveland. He came down to Holmes County. He came down to the farm one weekend, and he said, "This is really great what you're doing. You're helping the economy." And I kind of looked at him like, "What do you mean?" "Well, you're creating wealth." And I remember he was an insurance broker, okay? And he goes, "If it wasn't for the wealth creators, I wouldn't have been successful." Because insurance brokers don't create wealth. It's the service type industry. So if you don't have people out there that are creating those opportunities and jobs, all the rest of the people are employed in service type sector jobs, don't have much opportunity. And so the way we do that, it's like I say, one, federal government has to get trimmed down. Spend money, less money, don't spend money to borrow money we don't have. Don't tax us to death, and don't regulate us to death. When we do those things, I think we put this country back, put the private sector back on the track, because there's that demand out there. And I have full confidence in the ingenuity and the American spirit. We do those things. This country, this economy takes off, and this country stays great and becomes remains the best country, the greatest country in the world, and the most opportunity. And we got to throw a lot of people out, and we started doing that November 2nd. And it's evident that a lot of people that got thrown out, and some that didn't get thrown out, didn't get the message because of their actions since November 2nd. So that's where we're at. Be happy to take questions. Yeah.
All the things that you want to do, Congress wants to do, and all the things that need to be done are going to take a great deal of intestinal fortitude for all of us.
Yep.
So far, the Republicans have not indicated that they're up for the fight. I think you're not going to accomplish anything. This most recent compromise on the Bush tax cuts, where they gave away more money for the unemployment, Obama won. Obama's a tricky person. So one of the big things that you're going to have to do, and all of you that watch the Tea Party, you have to fight for what you believe in and not cross the aisle and compromise. Because you know, compromising with Democrats means giving in money. So please, with all your might and strength, fight for what is right, what we need. Thank you.
Last I couldn't disagree with what's happening. So-called Democrats. We don't know what's happening. People on the left are playing the bottom of people on the right. So I agree with you. The other thing, let the taxes increase, I think it puts us in a severe recession. And so, right now the Republicans are in the best position. Now, my guess is if November 2nd didn't happen the way it happened, I can bet you, assure you, that the Democrats would not have been doing any of this. They would have been raising taxes big time, because that's all what they're all about. So hopefully we can turn around next year and start chipping away at on the spending side. That's what we have to do. And I think we will see their fight. I don't know what's going to happen in the Senate, but what we're going to do in the House, we've had a lot of discussions on this. We're going to have two main kind of general things we're going to do. The committees are going to mostly function oversight. We're going to have oversight hearings. We're going to call administration officials in and make them answer to all their nonsense, and they can't give these answers. That's going to be interesting. So there's going to be a lot of oversight hearings, on the spending side, we're going to send a lot of bills to the Senate. Okay, like we said, we're going to send them the repeal of Obamacare. I'm confident that's going to the Senate early next year. And let's see what the Senate does. But I think American people are going to have to be engaged, and that's what the Tea Party movement is really a great thing, because they're part of engagement. But by the word of caution, what I've seen now, you can't be at the point. We got to be a little careful how we do it. You know, if the rest of the world out here, you know, if the Tea Party gets branded as just being total crazies, you're going to lose credibility. But I see most of the Tea Party people as regular American people, hardworking, trying to raise their families, you know, and hardworking people. But just a word of caution, we got to be a little careful, because you see what's happening over in Europe and England. Those riots are going on because of cuts, and my point is, there's a lot of people in this country that think what's been happening has been a good thing, and so it's going to get real interesting, because you know, what's happening in Europe and England, it's just, you know, we got a divided country. You know, we got the people that think that government owes them everything, and they don't realize that if we don't fix this, there won't be nothing for anybody, because you know, either the value of the dollar will go through the basement. You know, I don't know what, you know, super stagflation or deflation. You know, we're in trouble, and we can't.